The restaurant was alive with the quiet hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Waiters moved quickly from table to table, carrying plates with careful precision, while the soft glow of chandeliers reflected off polished wood and glass. The atmosphere was both elegant and comforting, a place where people came to enjoy not just their meals, but the experience itself. One young waitress moved among the tables, her hands steady despite the rush. She smiled politely at the guests, took orders, and delivered dishes with a practiced grace, though her eyes occasionally darted toward the piano in the corner of the room. It was an old upright piano, its black lacquer slightly faded at the edges, and it had seen many years of music and quiet moments. She often watched it while working, imagining what it would be like to play. Music had always been a part of her life, though she had never performed in front of anyone beyond her family and friends. The thought of playing in public made her heart race, a mix of excitement and fear. The door to the restaurant opened, and a man walked in, drawing attention without trying. He was tall, with an air of confidence that made people notice him immediately. His suit was tailored and elegant, his shoes polished to a shine. He carried himself with the kind of ease that comes from success and experience, but there was something warm in his expression that softened the sharpness of his appearance. He walked directly to the piano area and took a seat at a nearby table, setting down a briefcase and a glass of water. The waitress, noticing him, felt a flicker of curiosity. There was a calm, almost magnetic presence about him that made her pause for a moment before she continued her work. She moved closer to the piano to refill a water glass at the side, pretending to adjust something on the table while stealing glances at him. He looked up and met her eyes, offering a polite nod and a small smile. It was a simple gesture, but it carried a sense of encouragement that she could not quite explain. As the minutes passed, he observed the room with quiet interest, occasionally glancing at the piano as if he had been expecting something. The other diners were busy with their conversations and meals, completely unaware of the silent exchange happening in the corner. The waitress continued her tasks, though her mind was increasingly distracted. She felt as if the man had noticed her in a way no one else had, as if he could see the part of her that longed to play music and share it with the world. Finally, when there was a brief lull in the service, he gestured politely for her to come over. Her heart skipped a beat, and she hesitated. She was a professional at serving tables, not performing on stage, and yet something in his calm, reassuring demeanor gave her a strange sense of safety. Taking a deep breath, she approached him, her hands slightly trembling. He greeted her with a gentle voice, complimenting her on the way she moved around the room, the way she interacted with guests, and then, almost casually, asked if she could play the piano. The request was simple, almost offhand, but it carried a weight that made her catch her breath. She glanced at the instrument, imagining her fingers on the keys, the notes filling the room. It was a fantasy she had nurtured in private, never daring to bring it into the open. Yet here it was, being offered as an opportunity she could not ignore. She swallowed hard, nodding slowly, and he smiled again, a gesture that seemed to dissolve some of her fear. She walked over to the piano, her steps measured and careful. The polished wood reflected the soft lights of the restaurant, and she felt a strange sense of anticipation, as if the room itself was holding its breath. She placed her hands lightly on the keys, feeling their smoothness under her fingers, and took a moment to steady herself. The businessman watched her with an encouraging gaze, his expression calm and patient, allowing her the space to find her confidence. As she prepared to play, her mind raced with thoughts of what might happen. Would she make mistakes? Would the diners look at her strangely? Would she falter under the weight of attention? And yet, beneath the nervousness, there was a spark of excitement, a reminder of why she had loved music in the first place. It was not about perfection. It was about expression, about sharing a piece of herself with others, even in a place where she usually went unnoticed. She pressed the first key softly, almost tentatively, and the note filled the room, clear and simple. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the sound, feeling it resonate through her fingers and into the space around her. The noise of the restaurant seemed to fade slightly, replaced by the gentle music she was creating. The businessman's eyes were still on her, patient and kind, and it was as if his confidence in her allowed her own to grow. The moment was fragile and delicate, but it was also filled with possibility. She took a deep breath and allowed her fingers to move more freely across the keys, letting the music flow naturally. It was a melody she had practiced countless times alone, yet now it carried a new life, shaped by the room, the audience, and the unexpected encouragement of a stranger who seemed to believe in her. She could feel the attention shifting, a subtle change in the energy around her, though no one had yet spoken or reacted. Her mind began to clear as she focused on the music. The nervous tension that had gripped her eased with each note, replaced by a growing sense of confidence and calm. She was aware of the diners continuing their conversations, the clatter of dishes, and the ambient noise of the restaurant. But those sounds became part of the background, a canvas on which she could paint her music. The piano, once intimidating, now felt like an extension of herself, a place where she could communicate without words. For the first time that evening, she felt fully present, connected to the music, to the room, and to the moment. The businessman's smile remained, small but encouraging, and she realized that his presence had helped her find this courage. It was a reminder that sometimes, the belief of even one person could spark confidence and open doors that had seemed firmly closed. She allowed herself a small smile, a silent acknowledgement of the courage she had found and the unexpected encouragement that had brought her to this point. As she continued to play, the melody grew stronger and more confident. It was a simple tune, yet it carried emotion, expression, and a sense of story that she had never felt able to convey in public before. The experience was both terrifying and exhilarating, a reminder of the power of music to connect people and evoke feeling. Though she could not yet see the full impact of her performance, she sensed that the atmosphere in the room had shifted, that something quiet and special was unfolding around her. This first part of her journey was about discovery and courage, about stepping into the unknown with a mix of fear and excitement. It was about the recognition that sometimes, an unexpected moment, a gentle encouragement, or a simple invitation could change everything. As she sat at the piano, fingers poised and heart racing, she understood that this was only the beginning, the opening chapter of a story that would unfold in ways she could not yet imagine. The young waitress sat at the piano, her fingers lightly touching the keys, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. The restaurant around her continued its gentle hum, but somehow, the room felt quieter. Even though diners were still talking and waiters moved about, she felt as if the space near the piano had shrunk into a small world of its own, a place where time slowed just enough for her to gather her courage. The businessman leaned slightly forward in his chair, his eyes kind and patient, his presence reassuring rather than intimidating. He didn't rush her or push her into action. Instead, he offered a calm smile and spoke softly, telling her that he had heard she could play and that it would be wonderful if she shared her music with everyone. His words were simple, but they carried weight because of the sincerity behind them. They made her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with a budding sense of possibility. She realized he wasn't just asking her to play for the room, but inviting her to share a part of herself she had hidden for so long. Her fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. Doubts crept in. What if she made mistakes? What if people laughed or didn't appreciate her playing? She had never performed for strangers before, and the thought made her stomach twist. Yet, alongside the fear, there was a spark of determination. She remembered the hours she had spent practicing alone, the moments when music had lifted her spirits and comforted her soul. She knew, deep down, that she had a gift, and for the first time, it felt like someone was giving her permission to use it openly. The businessman noticed her hesitation and gently encouraged her, reminding her that the piano was meant to be played and that there was beauty in every note, even if it was imperfect. He said it in a way that made her feel supported rather than pressured. She took a deep breath, letting his words settle in her mind and ease the tension in her body. Slowly, she allowed herself to lean forward and press a single key. The sound rang out, clear but delicate, filling the space around her. It was a small start, yet it felt monumental to her. As she experimented with the keys, her confidence began to grow. She tried a few simple notes, letting them flow into one another, testing her fingers against the instrument she had long admired from afar. The businessman's calm presence remained, his attention unwavering but not intrusive. He gave a slight nod when she found a note that felt right, a subtle signal of encouragement. With each movement, she felt more connected to the piano, more connected to herself. Other diners began to notice the shift in the room. Conversations slowed, and glances turned toward the piano. People were curious, sensing that something unusual and intriguing was happening. A hush settled over certain tables, and even the waiters paused briefly in their tasks, stealing quick glances at the young woman who was beginning to play. She hadn't intended to draw attention, but the music had a way of doing that naturally. It demanded focus, and those who heard it found themselves turning inward to listen. She started to play a familiar tune, something simple and gentle, the melody carrying a softness that matched her initial hesitancy. Her fingers moved with care, testing each chord and note, listening to the sound and feeling it resonate through her chest. The music began to flow more smoothly, the initial stiffness replaced by a growing ease. She realized that the piano wasn't just an object. It was an extension of her emotions, a way to communicate what words could not. And as she allowed herself to connect more deeply with the instrument, the nervousness that had gripped her began to dissolve. The businessman remained an anchor throughout this process, a steady presence that made it easier for her to take risks. He didn't comment excessively, but his subtle gestures, a nod, a slight smile, a calm gaze, gave her the courage to continue. She felt as if he understood that the real challenge wasn't just in playing the notes, but in trusting herself enough to express them freely. That trust, that gentle support made all the difference. The melody grew more confident as she added more notes, moving beyond the simple beginnings and allowing her creativity to take shape. Her fingers moved with increasing precision, yet there was a softness to each touch, a human quality that made the music feel alive. She glanced briefly at the diners, noticing how their heads had turned, how some had quieted their conversations, and how a few had paused in their meals, captivated by the unexpected beauty in the room. She realized that her music had the power to change the atmosphere, to create a moment of shared experience, even if only briefly. She felt a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. The businessman's encouragement had unlocked something within her, a permission to be herself and share her gift. The restaurant, usually a place of routine and structured interaction, had transformed into a space of possibility. She could feel the energy of the room shifting as her music wove through it, connecting strangers through a simple, heartfelt expression. Each note was a bridge, a quiet signal that vulnerability could be met with appreciation and support. As she continued, she experimented with dynamics and tempo, letting the music breathe and flow naturally. The melody swelled softly, then retreated, creating a rhythm that felt alive and responsive to the moment. She discovered nuances she hadn't noticed before, subtleties in the sound of the piano that reflected her own emotions. The music became a conversation between her, the instrument, and the room. It was a dialogue without words, yet it spoke volumes, conveying feelings that went beyond explanation. The businessman observed quietly, clearly moved by the unfolding performance. There was admiration in his gaze, but more importantly, there was recognition, a respect for her courage and the authenticity of her expression. It was not about technical skill or flawless execution. It was about the honesty of the moment, the willingness to step forward and share something deeply personal. His encouragement had given her the push she needed, and in response, she allowed herself to fully inhabit the music. Other diners, now fully attentive, felt the power of the moment as well. Some sat in awe, impressed by the raw emotion in the performance. Others felt a sense of calm wash over them, their own thoughts quieted by the gentle melodies. Even the staff, who had grown accustomed to the everyday rhythm of the restaurant, paused to listen, caught up in the unexpected beauty of the scene. The waitress had become the center of a shared experience, a reminder that art could touch people in surprising and meaningful ways. She realized that the initial fear and hesitation had been replaced by a growing sense of confidence and connection. The piano was no longer a distant object of admiration. It was a companion, an instrument through which she could express herself and engage with the world. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, a recognition that she had taken a step beyond her comfort zone and discovered something transformative. The businessman's gentle urging had been the catalyst, but the courage and talent had always been within her. By the end of this part of the performance, she felt a sense of accomplishment and joy. The initial uncertainty and self-doubt had been replaced by presence and engagement. She understood that playing for others did not diminish her. It amplified her, allowing her to share her voice and emotions in a way that resonated with those around her. The experience was intimate yet public, personal yet shared, and it left her with a feeling of possibility she had never before imagined. The stage was set for what was to come. Her first steps into public performance had been tentative but meaningful, laying the groundwork for a fuller, more confident expression. She had taken the businessman's encouragement to heart and transformed it into action, creating a moment that, while quiet at first, had the potential to captivate and inspire. The piano had become a vessel, the music a message, and she the conduit through which it flowed, opening the door to a story that was only beginning to unfold. The young waitress sat at the piano, her fingers now moving with more confidence than before. The first tentative notes had passed, and now the melody began to flow more freely. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself be carried by the music, her emotions guiding her hands. It was a familiar tune she had practiced countless times, yet now it felt entirely new. The piano responded to her touch, its voice growing stronger and clearer with each note, and the room seemed to lean in, eager to hear more. The businessman remained seated, observing quietly but with evident admiration. His calm presence was a steady anchor for her, a reminder that she was supported and encouraged. He did not speak, but his eyes communicated a warmth and understanding that gave her courage. She felt a sense of connection with him that went beyond words, as if he understood the importance of this moment more deeply than anyone else could. Slowly, the atmosphere in the restaurant began to change. Conversations dimmed, laughter softened, and even the sound of plates and silverware seemed to recede into the background. Diners who had been focused on their meals and chatter now turned their attention toward the piano. Some leaned forward slightly, intrigued by the unexpected performance, while others stopped mid-conversation, captivated by the music that floated through the air. The waitress could feel the energy of the room shifting, the collective curiosity and attention creating a sense of shared anticipation. With each chord she struck, her confidence grew. She began to explore the melody more boldly, adding subtle variations and gentle flourishes that brought the music to life. Her fingers danced across the keys, sometimes softly, sometimes with a more deliberate strength, creating a rhythm that felt natural and expressive. It was no longer just practice. It was a performance, a moment of personal expression shared with everyone around her. She realized that she was not playing for perfection, but for connection, and that thought freed her. The businessman gave a slight nod, almost imperceptible, but it felt like a gentle push forward. She smiled faintly in his direction, grateful for his encouragement, and allowed herself to become fully immersed in the music. The melody began to take on a deeper emotional resonance, conveying feelings she had long held inside. There was vulnerability in her playing, but it was coupled with strength and authenticity. The combination drew the attention of the diners more fully, their curiosity turning into genuine appreciation. Some diners whispered to each other quietly, sharing their amazement at the young woman's skill and the unexpected beauty of her music. A few reached for their phones, eager to capture the moment, but they did so discreetly, careful not to disturb the growing intimacy of the performance. The energy in the room was shifting from casual dining to a shared, almost sacred experience. People were not just listening. They were feeling, letting the music touch them in ways that words could not. The waitress continued, letting her emotions guide her fingers across the keys. She experimented with dynamics, allowing the music to swell and retreat, creating a natural ebb and flow that kept the listeners engaged. Her body moved slightly with the rhythm, a subtle dance that reflected her growing confidence. She had entered a zone where the piano and she were in perfect harmony, a place where the music seemed to speak directly from her heart to the hearts of those listening. The businessman's presence remained a quiet but powerful support. He did not clap or comment, but his unwavering attention and gentle smile encouraged her to push further, to explore the music without fear of judgment. She felt a sense of freedom she had never experienced before, realizing that the room's attention, rather than being intimidating, was empowering. It was a rare moment where vulnerability and strength coexisted, and she embraced it fully. As the melody developed, she began to add personal touches that reflected her own style. A delicate trill here, a soft pause there, each note carefully considered yet flowing naturally. The music became a story, a narrative that conveyed emotion without words. Diners leaned in, caught up in the unfolding tale, their attention riveted by the unexpected talent before them. The piano had become a bridge, connecting the performer with her audience in a shared moment of beauty. The waitress noticed the subtle reactions around her, the way a hand rested lightly on a table in appreciation, the slight widening of eyes in surprise, the small nods of encouragement. Each reaction reinforced her confidence, reminding her that her music was being received and valued. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a combination of pride and relief. For so long, she had kept her talent private, uncertain how others might respond. Now, she saw that sharing it could create joy and connection, and the realization was both powerful and freeing. The melody began to build in intensity, though it never became overwhelming. She added layers of harmony, exploring the depths of the piano's sound, letting the resonance fill the room. The gentle hum of conversation had vanished, replaced by the pure focus of attentive listeners. The restaurant had transformed from a place of routine dining to a space of shared artistry, a moment suspended in time. She felt a deep satisfaction, a recognition that she was contributing something meaningful, something that had the power to touch others in unexpected ways. Her fingers moved with growing assurance, each note ringing out with clarity and emotion. She experimented with tempo, slowing at moments to allow the music to breathe, then accelerating slightly to add a sense of movement and anticipation. It was a delicate balance, but one she navigated naturally, her years of practice and passion guiding her decisions. The businessman's calm, approving gaze never wavered, serving as both anchor and inspiration, and she drew strength from his presence. The energy in the room continued to rise, but it was subtle and gentle, a shared excitement that was almost palpable. The diners were no longer passive observers. They were participants in the moment, feeling the music in a way that was deeply personal yet universally shared. She realized that this connection was the true power of performance, the ability to communicate emotion, to create a space where people could pause, listen, and feel together. As the performance progressed, she allowed herself to experiment further, introducing small improvisations that added texture and richness to the melody. Each variation felt natural, a reflection of her own expression rather than a mere repetition of familiar patterns. The piano became an extension of her voice, a medium through which she could tell her story without words. The businessman's presence remained a source of reassurance, a reminder that she was supported and that her expression was valid. The room held its breath as she played, the atmosphere charged with a quiet anticipation. She could sense the collective focus of the diners, their attention drawn entirely to the music. Even those who had been distracted or engaged in conversation now found themselves immersed in the moment, their minds attuned to the unfolding melody. It was a rare and magical occurrence, where a single performance could capture the attention of so many, drawing them together in silent appreciation. By the end of this section of her playing, she had fully transformed from a nervous, hesitant performer into a confident, expressive musician. The initial fear had been replaced by a sense of empowerment, the uncertainty replaced by connection and presence. The melody she had played was no longer just notes on a page. It was a living, breathing expression of her emotion and courage, shared openly with an audience who had come to recognize and appreciate it. The piano had become a conduit for her voice, and the room had become a space where her music could resonate, leaving a lasting impression on all who were present. The young waitress had settled fully into her music now. Her fingers moved confidently across the keys, her body swaying ever so slightly with the rhythm, and her mind was completely focused on the melody. The notes that poured from the piano were no longer tentative. They carried a richness and emotion that filled the room. Each chord resonated, creating a tapestry of sound that seemed to speak directly to the hearts of everyone present. She was no longer thinking about the audience or herself. She was lost in the music, and in that moment, nothing else existed. The businessman remained seated nearby, his eyes fixed on her, but his expression was calm and appreciative rather than expectant. He had seen the transformation take place, watched her grow from hesitant beginnings into a performer who had discovered her own voice. His presence was a quiet support, a reminder that encouragement could be life-changing. He knew the power of the moment, and he understood the rare courage it took for someone to step forward and share a deeply personal talent in front of strangers. The atmosphere in the restaurant had shifted completely. The soft hum of conversation and the occasional clatter of dishes had disappeared, replaced by an almost reverent silence. Diners were leaning forward slightly, their attention captured fully by the music. Their eyes followed her movements across the keys, their expressions reflecting awe, surprise, and quiet admiration. Even the waiters, who had been moving briskly moments before, had paused to listen, drawn in by the unexpected beauty of the performance. She began to play with greater emotional depth, allowing herself to explore the nuances of each note. The melody grew more expressive, carrying subtle variations in tempo and dynamics that created a sense of story. There was a tension in some parts, a gentle release in others, and every listener seemed to be drawn into the ebb and flow of the music. The piano became a vessel for her emotions, a medium through which she could communicate feelings that words could not capture. As the notes filled the room, she could sense the effect her playing was having on those around her. A couple at a nearby table had stopped mid-bite, their hands resting on their utensils as they listened in rapt attention. A young man in the corner had his head slightly tilted, eyes wide with amazement. Even the chef, who had stepped out briefly to see the performance, stood quietly at the edge of the dining area, completely absorbed. The waitress could feel the collective presence of the audience, their focus both grounding and inspiring her. The melody took on a gentle crescendo, each note building upon the last, carrying the emotion higher and higher. She experimented with subtle improvisations, adding delicate trills and harmonies that enhanced the music's depth without overpowering the natural flow. The piano responded beautifully, its tones rich and resonant, amplifying the expression of her fingers. She felt a profound connection with the instrument, as if it understood her intentions and helped bring them to life in the most perfect way. The businessman's gaze remained unwavering, a quiet reassurance that she was doing exactly what she needed to do. She felt a sense of gratitude toward him, understanding that his encouragement had been the spark that allowed her to reach this level of performance. His calm confidence had allowed her own to emerge, and she recognized that the impact of even one person's belief could be transformative. She allowed herself to smile faintly as she played, a silent acknowledgement of the support that had guided her to this point. The audience was now completely enraptured. There was no chatter, no shifting in chairs, no distractions. Just the music and the people who had been touched by it. Some listeners closed their eyes, letting the melody wash over them and carry them away from the confines of the restaurant. Others watched her hands move gracefully across the keys, fascinated by the skill and emotion combined in such a natural and effortless way. It was as if the room had become a shared space of reverence, everyone participating in a moment of collective wonder. The waitress's confidence continued to grow. She was no longer merely performing a practiced melody. She was creating, improvising, and expressing herself freely. The music flowed seamlessly, guided by her intuition and the emotions she wanted to convey. Each note was carefully considered but also spontaneous, reflecting the balance of control and freedom that made the performance so compelling. The audience felt it too, responding with subtle movements, attentive glances, and quiet expressions of admiration. The melody shifted, becoming softer and more introspective. She allowed pauses to linger, creating a sense of anticipation and drawing the listeners deeper into the emotional journey. The subtle variations in rhythm and tone spoke volumes, conveying feelings of hope, longing, and quiet joy. Every person in the room felt the impact, some visibly moved, others simply holding their breath, absorbing the music in their own private way. The businessman finally leaned back slightly in his chair, his expression reflecting both pride and amazement. He had seen her evolve in a short span of time from a hesitant, self-conscious waitress into a confident, expressive musician. His eyes shone with quiet admiration, not just for her skill, but for her courage and authenticity. He understood that this moment was more than just a performance. It was a revelation, a demonstration of the power of encouragement, courage, and self-expression. As the performance continued, the young waitress felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The music had become a dialogue between her and the room, an unspoken connection that transcended words. She was aware of the effect she was having, but she was also fully absorbed in the act of creation itself. Each note was an expression of her courage, each chord a testament to her willingness to step beyond her comfort zone and share a part of herself that had long remained hidden. The audience remained captivated, their silence a testament to the impact of the performance. Some were visibly moved, their eyes glistening with emotion, while others simply sat in awe, unable to take their eyes off the pianist. Even the staff, who had been accustomed to the routines of the restaurant, were caught up in the moment, witnessing something extraordinary in their everyday surroundings. The young waitress realized that she had created a space where music could unite, inspire, and touch everyone present. The music swelled one final time, a powerful yet delicate combination of notes that carried both strength and vulnerability. She allowed herself to fully inhabit the moment, pouring all her emotion into the final phrases. The room seemed to hold its breath, every listener completely absorbed in the sound, the energy, and the shared experience. For a brief time, the restaurant became a sanctuary, a place where music could communicate what words never could. As the last note lingered and faded into silence, the room remained still for a heartbeat longer, as if no one wanted to break the spell. The effect of the performance was profound. Every person present felt a sense of awe and connection, touched by the beauty and authenticity of what they had just witnessed. The young waitress, breathing slightly heavier now, opened her eyes and looked around, finally meeting the gaze of the businessman. He gave a small, approving nod, his expression reflecting both pride and gratitude for the gift she had shared. The silence began to break slowly, not with chatter or clamor, but with soft, appreciative applause. Diners clapped quietly at first, then more confidently, their admiration and amazement filling the room. Some rose from their seats, approaching the piano to offer smiles and words of praise, while others remained seated, still holding onto the magic of the moment. The young waitress felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief, pride, and joy. She had shared a piece of herself and witnessed the profound impact it could have on others, and in that realization, she felt truly alive. The applause filled the room, gentle at first, then swelling into a chorus of appreciation. The young waitress sat at the piano, her hands resting lightly on the keys, taking in the moment. She could feel her heart racing, a mix of relief, pride, and joy coursing through her. She had stepped out of her comfort zone, shared something deeply personal, and witnessed the power of her music to connect with others. It was an experience that would stay with her forever, a memory she would return to in quiet moments when she needed courage or inspiration. The businessman rose from his chair and approached the piano. He placed a hand gently on the edge of the instrument, his eyes warm and sincere. He thanked her, not just for playing, but for sharing a part of herself that many people never dared to reveal. His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of understanding and recognition. He left a generous tip on the piano bench, a tangible acknowledgement of her talent and effort, but more importantly, he left her with a sense of validation and encouragement that went beyond money. The other diners gradually resumed their conversations, though a quiet energy lingered in the air, a shared sense of having witnessed something special. Some spoke softly to each other, marveling at the unexpected performance and the skill and emotion it conveyed. Others approached the piano, offering small smiles, nods, or words of appreciation. The atmosphere of the restaurant had been transformed, if only for a short while, into a space of shared connection, beauty, and human expression. She realized that music had the power to create moments of unity, even among strangers. As she stepped away from the piano, her hands still tingling from the performance, the young waitress felt a sense of confidence and self-worth she had never experienced before. The fear and hesitation that had gripped her at the start of the evening were replaced by a quiet assurance in her own abilities. She understood that this moment was not about perfection, but about courage, authenticity, and the willingness to share a piece of oneself with the world. That realization filled her with a deep sense of fulfillment. The staff of the restaurant, who had observed the entire performance, gathered around to offer their praise. They spoke of her talent, her courage, and the beauty of the music she had created. Their words were genuine and heartfelt, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest. For years, she had worked in the restaurant, often unnoticed, performing her duties with diligence but rarely being recognized for anything beyond her professional competence. Now, she felt seen in a way she had never experienced, not just as an employee, but as a person with unique gifts to share. Even the customers who had been less engaged initially lingered, offering smiles, applause, and nods of respect. The performance had left an impression on everyone present, a reminder that extraordinary moments could happen in the most ordinary places. The young waitress realized that courage and talent, when expressed authentically, had the power to inspire and touch people in ways that words alone could not. It was a lesson she would carry with her always. The businessman, having completed his visit, paused briefly at the door. He gave her one last nod, a gesture filled with encouragement and respect. It was a silent acknowledgement that he had witnessed not just a musical performance, but a personal triumph. His departure left a lingering sense of gratitude and inspiration, a reminder that even brief encounters with the right kind of support could change the course of a life. She felt a renewed determination to continue sharing her music, to explore the possibilities that had once seemed out of reach. In the quiet that followed, she took a moment to reflect on her journey. The nervousness that had accompanied her to the piano had been replaced by exhilaration and satisfaction. She realized that the fear she had felt was a natural part of stepping into the unknown, and that overcoming it had opened the door to something transformative. Each note she had played was a testament to her courage, and each reaction from the audience was a reminder of the impact that one person's willingness to be vulnerable could have on others. As she returned to her duties, the young waitress carried herself with a new sense of confidence. Her interactions with diners felt lighter, her steps more assured, and her smile more genuine. She had experienced firsthand the power of authenticity and expression, and it showed in the way she moved through the restaurant. The experience had shifted something within her, a recognition that her talents were valuable and worthy of being shared. It was not just about music. It was about embracing her full potential and allowing it to shine. Later, in a quiet moment between tables, she sat at the piano again, not to perform for an audience, but to connect with herself and her music. Her fingers moved over the keys with ease and fluidity, the melody flowing naturally as she explored new variations and harmonies. It was a private celebration of what she had achieved, a continuation of the journey that had begun with hesitation and fear. The piano became a companion, a trusted partner in her ongoing exploration of creativity and self-expression. The memory of the businessman's encouragement stayed with her, a reminder that belief in someone else could unlock hidden potential. She understood that the experience was not just about one performance, but about discovering the courage to step into the light, to share her gifts, and to trust in her abilities. It was a lesson she would carry into every aspect of her life, a guiding principle that could inspire her to embrace challenges and opportunities with confidence and grace. The young waitress realized that life was full of unexpected moments, opportunities to reveal parts of oneself that had long been hidden. The evening had shown her that talent, when combined with courage and encouragement, could create profound connections and lasting impressions. She felt a sense of purpose and direction, a recognition that her music was a gift not only for herself but for those who could be touched by it. It was a powerful reminder that sharing one's talents and passions could have a ripple effect, inspiring and uplifting others in ways that were both tangible and intangible. As the night drew to a close, she reflected on the transformation she had experienced. From nervous hesitation to confident expression, from private practice to public performance, she had navigated a journey that was both challenging and rewarding. The applause, the smiles, the quiet admiration of the diners, all of it had contributed to a profound sense of accomplishment. She understood that this moment was just the beginning, the first step in a continuing journey of growth, exploration, and self-discovery. She returned to her duties with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying the lessons of the evening with her. Every interaction, every task, and every encounter became an opportunity to embody the confidence and authenticity she had discovered. The memory of the piano, the music, and the reactions of those around her would remain a source of inspiration, a touchstone to remind her of what was possible when courage met opportunity. She knew that the journey would continue, with new challenges, new performances, and new moments of connection, but she was ready to embrace them with an open heart. In the quiet moments after the restaurant had emptied, she sat once more at the piano, her fingers tracing familiar keys. She played softly, letting the music fill the empty room, reflecting on the evening's experiences. The notes carried a sense of gratitude, accomplishment, and hope. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had taken a risk, shared her talent, and witnessed the profound effect it could have on others. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a symbol of courage, creativity, and the power of human connection. As she finally stood and stepped away, she carried with her the confidence, inspiration, and fulfillment of the night. The experience had changed her, opening doors to possibilities she had not previously imagined. She knew that her music could touch lives, create moments of beauty, and inspire courage in herself and others. The evening had been a testament to the power of encouragement, the impact of vulnerability, and the importance of embracing one's gifts fully and fearlessly. She walked through the restaurant with a quiet, radiant confidence, ready to continue her journey, carrying the lessons and joys of the night with her wherever she went.